In July 2025, the world of wrestling came to a halt. News headlines carried a phrase that many fans refused to believe at first. Hulk Hogan is dead. On July 24th, at the age of 71, the man who once grabbed a mic and shouted, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" passed away from cardiac arrest. And with him, a piece of wrestling history. Hogan died surrounded by family at his home in Florida. His wife, Sky Daly, would later write on social media that her heart was shattered into 1,000 pieces. His daughter Brooke said, "He wasn't perfect, but he was ours." WWE issued an official statement, and the next episode of SmackDown was dedicated entirely to Hogan's memory. The lights dimmed in the arena, and thousands of fans raised their hands wrapped in yellow and red, the colors that once defined an era. But how did a regular guy named Terry Bollea, from a small town in Georgia, become a real-life superhero to millions and then the center of scandals, lawsuits, and disgrace? The story of Hulk Hogan isn't just the story of a star. It's the story of a man who was everywhere. In the ring, in movies, on lunchboxes, in video games, in commercials, and in the minds of an entire generation. It's the story of how a man became a brand, and how the brand began to overshadow the man himself. It's a story of a hero's rise, and his eventual fall. And now, with his passing, only questions remain. If you think you already know Hulk Hogan, think again. They called him the face of wrestling, the most recognizable wrestler of all time, the real American hero. He sold millions of t-shirts, packed arenas to the rafters, and could single-handedly boost a TV network's ratings by 30%. Kids idolized him. Adults admired his charisma. And Hogan? He smiled for the cameras, lifted giants over his head, and preached about faith and truth as life's guiding forces. But behind the curtain, it was a different story. When the lights went down, a different man remained. One who sued journalists, was caught on camera using racial slurs, allegedly sabotaged colleagues' careers, and according to some, betrayed the very company he once carried on his shoulders. He inspired, and he destroyed. He saved the company from collapse, and was later erased from its Hall of Fame. He sang anthems in stadiums, and later became a symbol of disgrace. He was a god in the arena, and an outcast in exile. When, on July 24th, 2025, WWE posted a short statement, "Hulk Hogan has passed away," it felt like the end of a legend. But really, it was just the beginning. Because when a legend dies, the truth begins to surface. And the only question is, what remains of the myth? A bronze statue, or the dust from courtroom archives? John Cena's words the next day were brief. "Thank you for what you gave us. And I'm sorry we never really understood who you were." So who was he? Hulk Hogan? A hero? A fraud? An icon, or a man who betrayed everything he stood for? A man who inspired millions? Or someone who hid his darkest flaws behind a yellow bandana and a bright, charismatic grin? In this documentary, we'll reveal everything. No filters, no censorship, just facts, just the truth. To understand who Terry Bollea really was, and why Hulk Hogan became not just the face of an era, but also its deepest contradiction. Before he became Hulk Hogan, he was just Terry Bollea, born on August 11th, 1953, in Augusta, Georgia, to a working-class American family. His father was a construction foreman of Italian descent, and his mother a homemaker with Panamanian roots. It was an ordinary childhood, in an ordinary neighborhood. No masks, no bandanas, no screaming fans. Just a young boy who dreamed of becoming someone great, even if he didn't yet know who exactly that someone was. The family soon moved to Florida, where Terry began to show an interest in sports. In high school, he played baseball and dabbled in music. But what truly captured his passion was weight training. His idol wasn't a wrestler or an actor. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger. Inspired by Arnold, Terry picked up a barbell and never put it down again. By the age of 15, he already looked like a grown man. Towering height, broad shoulders, and a naturally massive frame. Nature had given him a gift, but he built on it with relentless work. He studied physiology and biochemistry in college, all while playing bass in the local clubs. Back then, he performed under a stage name, but it wasn't yet Hogan. Everything changed in the late 1970s when he first stepped into a professional wrestling training facility. For most young men, it was a brutal world, full of pain, hard landings, and constant injuries. But Terry saw something different. He saw a stage, a theater, a career, a shot at immortality. His first months of training were spent in a local Tampa school. His physique already made him stand out, but he lacked technique. He worked in silence, tirelessly, 6 to 8 hours a day, learning how to bump properly, throw believable punches, lead matches. At that time, he had no idea that one day he would transform professional wrestling from a sport into a spectacle. A major turning point came when he met legendary trainer 𝗖𝗢𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗑𝗏. On his first day, Matsuda broke Terry's leg.
Grabbed my toe and broke my leg.
He believed that only through pain could a student prove he truly belonged in this business. Terry returned 2 months later, cast removed, determined, and that earned respect. From that moment on, he never looked back. In 1979, he got his first real opportunity, an invitation to join the WWF, then the World Wrestling Federation. There, he met Vince McMahon Sr., and the transformation began. Names changed. First Sterling Golden, then Terry the Boulder, and finally, Hulk Hogan, a name inspired by the rising popularity of Marvel's Hulk and his own superheroic build. McMahon didn't just see a wrestler. He saw a future icon, a figure who could unite sports, entertainment, music, and patriotism into one person. America in the 1980s needed a hero, and it got one, in the form of Terry Bollea. Only now, he was no longer Terry, he was Hulk. The 1980s were a time of transformation in American culture. MTV was exploding, consumerism was booming, and pop culture was becoming louder, brighter, and bigger than life. Into this new, colorful world stepped Hulk Hogan, not just as a wrestler, but as a cultural force. It all started with a single moment. January 23, 1984, Madison Square Garden. Hulk Hogan faced off against the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship. The crowd was electric, the air thick with anticipation. And then, in just over 5 minutes, Hogan body slammed the Sheik, dropped his iconic leg, and won the title. That moment didn't just crown a new champion, it sparked a movement. It sparked Hulkamania. Almost overnight, Hulk Hogan became a household name. With his ripped physique, signature mustache, wild yellow and red gear, and booming voice yelling, "What you gonna do, brother?" Hogan wasn't just wrestling, he was performing. And the audience couldn't get enough. He was everything America wanted at the time. Strong, clean-cut, all-American. He represented hard work, moral values, and patriotism. Hogan told kids to train, say their prayers, and eat their vitamins. He wasn't just an athlete, he was a role model, a superhero in human form. And Vince McMahon? He saw the gold mine. Under McMahon's ambitious vision, Hogan became the centerpiece of WWF's national expansion. Wrestling moved out of smoky local arenas and into the bright lights of primetime television. It became colorful, It became cartoonish. It became mainstream. In 1985, McMahon launched WrestleMania, a high-stakes gamble that would either bankrupt WWF or redefine wrestling forever. It did the latter. With celebrity appearances by Mr. T, Cyndi Lauper, and Muhammad Ali, the event was a wild success. Hogan headlined, of course, in a tag team match alongside Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. The image of Hogan and Mr. T raising their fists in victory became iconic. WrestleMania 2, 3rd, and less would follow, each bigger than the last. But it was WrestleMania 3 in 1987 that solidified Hogan's status as a legend. Facing the undefeated giant, Andre the Giant, in front of a record-breaking crowd at the Pontiac Silverdome, Hogan did the impossible. He slammed Andre, a 520-pound man, and pinned him clean in the middle of the ring. That image, Hogan lifting Andre, is burned into wrestling history. To fans, it was more than just a match. It was David
greatest moment ever in my life, as far as my career, it has to be that.
Outside the ring, the Hulk Hogan brand exploded. He starred in movies like No Holds Barred, Suburban Commando, and Mr. Nanny. He released his own rock album. He appeared in cartoons. Action figures flew off the shelves. T-shirts, lunchboxes, headbands, his merchandise was everywhere. You didn't just watch Hogan, you lived Hogan. The term Hulkamania wasn't just marketing.
Landscape of our sport.
Children idolized him. Parents trusted him. Media adored him. And behind the scenes, the WWF was raking in millions. Hogan was the face of $1 billion industry. Every show, every promo, every leg drop was money. But with that fame came pressure. And in time, cracks began to form in the mask. By the late 80s, the public had started to see more of the man behind the character. Rumors of backstage politics, ego clashes, and Hogan's refusal to lose clean to other wrestlers began to surface. But fans didn't care, not yet. To them, he was still immortal, still untouchable, still the champion of their childhoods. By the end of the 1980s, Hulk Hogan wasn't just the face of wrestling, he was wrestling. He headlined sold-out arenas, led merchandise sales, and appeared on everything from talk shows to Saturday morning cartoons. But with such overwhelming fame came an unavoidable truth. When you stand at the top for too long, people eventually start looking for ways to tear you down. Behind the booming catchphrases and oversized charisma, Terry Bollea, the man behind Hogan, was grappling with a life that was beginning to spiral out of control. The first public sign that not everything was perfect came in 1985 during a live TV appearance. Hogan was demonstrating a wrestling move on talk show host Richard Belzer. What was supposed to be a harmless hold quickly turned dangerous. Hogan applied a front face lock and didn't let go. Belzer passed out, fell, and cracked his skull on the stage floor. He later sued Hogan and the WWF for $5 million.
He let me drop to the floor, and I was unconscious, went to the floor, hit the back of my head, blood gushing out.
The case was settled out of court, but the incident painted the first shadow on Hogan's pristine image. Was the hero too aggressive? Too careless? Whispers became louder in the lockers of the ring. Colleagues described Hogan as paranoid, controlling, and politically ruthless. He allegedly had a say in who won and lost matches, especially if he was involved. Up-and-coming wrestlers began to see a pattern. Those who challenged Hogan's position didn't get far. If someone was gaining too much popularity, Hogan, according to multiple accounts, would use his influence backstage to stall their momentum. Sometimes this meant refusing to lose to them. Other times, it meant convincing management they weren't ready. To some, this was smart politics. To others, it was pure ego. Even Andre the Giant, Hogan's most iconic rival, had mixed feelings. While the two shared one of wrestling's greatest moments at WrestleMania 3, stories later emerged that Andre didn't particularly like Hogan, accusing him of being disrespectful and overly self-promotional. Hogan, for his part, always spoke highly of Andre, but the tension was there, hidden, lingering. And then came the steroid era. In the early 1990s, the wrestling world was rocked by federal investigations into steroid distribution. Vince McMahon and WWF were in the crosshairs. And Hogan? He wasn't just a wrestler. He was the wrestler. The government wanted to know, was their golden boy juicing? In 1991, on national television, Hogan appeared on the Arsenio Hall show to address the rumors. He denied ever abusing steroids, claiming he only used them once or twice, years earlier, for medical reasons. The audience applauded, but those in the wrestling world raised an eyebrow. Many knew the truth, and Hogan's denial didn't just feel dishonest, it felt like betrayal. He threw the locker room under the bus to protect his brand. 2 years later, when the federal trial began against Vince McMahon, Hogan testified, but he was granted immunity in exchange for his cooperation. On the stand, he admitted to using steroids regularly between 1976 and 1991. His testimony helped McMahon avoid conviction, but it also confirmed what many suspected. Hogan had lied, not just to the government, not just to his co-workers, but to the fans who idolized him. The damage was done. Sponsors backed away. Parents grew skeptical. The man who had once preached vitamins and prayers now seemed like a fraud.
He said he never took them. That was a lie. Common laugh used to be when he used to tell the kids to say their prayers and take their vitamins. In the dressing room, we'd always laugh and say, orals or injectables, when he'd tell them to take their vitamins, because a slang term for steroids is vitamin.
Hogan's mainstream appeal faltered. His matches no longer felt electric. The cheers got quieter. The merchandise stopped flying off the shelves. And suddenly, the invincible hero felt human. Then came the personal toll. Hogan was dealing with a failing marriage, growing isolation and physical exhaustion from decades on the road. He had built an empire, but at the cost of real human connection. Interviews from the early 90s show a man clearly struggling to separate himself from his character. Terry Bollea had disappeared under the weight of Hulk Hogan, and now, with the spotlight dimming, he didn't know who he was anymore. He began to fade from the public eye. The man who once stood triumphant over Andre the Giant was now battling lawsuits, scandals, and an industry that had begun to outgrow him. Hulkamania was no longer running wild, it was running out. But if anyone knew how to reinvent himself, it was Hogan. And soon, he would do just that in the most shocking way possible. By the mid-1990s, Hulk Hogan was a fading icon. The cheers were softer. The magic was gone, and worse. Fans were starting to turn on him. The bright yellow shirts and say your prayers and eat your vitamins gimmick no longer resonated with an audience that was growing older, edgier, and more cynical. In an era where anti-heroes were beginning to dominate pop culture, where Batman was brooding and Stone Cold Steve Austin was flipping off authority, Hulkamania felt like a cartoon in a world that wanted something real, and Hogan knew it. So in 1996, he did something no one expected, something that would shock the industry to its core and redefine professional wrestling for a generation. On July 7th, 1996, during the main event of WCW's Bash at the Beach, fans watched as Hogan walked to the ring while two former WWF stars, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, now known as the Outsiders, were attacking He dropped his famous leg drop, not on the villains, but on Macho Man Randy Savage, not in cheers, but in pure, stunned rage. Fans threw trash into the ring, booed louder than anyone had ever booed Hogan before. The man who spent over a decade as the moral compass of wrestling had just turned heel. The ultimate betrayal. And with that single act, Hulk Hogan died in the eyes of many fans. In his place, a new persona was born, Hollywood Hogan. Gone was the red and yellow. Hollywood Hogan wore black. Black bandana, black shades, black leather. He was arrogant, cocky, and unapologetically evil. He mocked the fans who once worshipped him. He spray-painted on fallen opponents. He stood with Hall and Nash to form the New World Order, a faction that blurred the line between fiction and reality, villains and revolutionaries. And the result? Wrestling exploded. Again. The NWO storyline was groundbreaking. It made WCW must-watch television. Hogan, once seen as outdated, was now the hottest thing in the business again. He played the role of manipulative egomaniac with such precision that it was hard to tell where the character ended and the real Hogan began. His promos were venomous. His ego, even bigger than before.
And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Hulk had a lot of influence, right?
Just like in WWF, Hogan wielded political power behind the scenes, allegedly dictating match outcomes, refusing to lose clean, and protecting his spot at the top, no matter who it buried beneath him. Younger talent like Bret Hart and Booker T found themselves sidelined, while Hogan inserted himself into every major storyline. Even longtime allies like Sting were affected, with Hogan allegedly delaying their climactic feud just to hold onto the spotlight a little longer. But for all the politics and ego, one thing was undeniable. Hollywood Hogan brought wrestling into its most profitable era. WCW beat WWF in the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks. Merchandise sales skyrocketed. Cable networks fought for broadcast rights. And the anti-hero revolution that Hogan helped usher in would go on to influence every major wrestling character that followed. Ironically, the man who had once symbolized all that was good and pure in wrestling had now become its most iconic villain.
I think he thought he was the big dog and the king dog. We're all backup players to Hulk Hogan, and that's the way he saw it.
But reinvention came with a cost. Hogan had blurred the lines between character and reality for so long that even his most passionate fans began to wonder who he really was. Was the arrogance on screen just an act? Or was it a glimpse into something more honest, more uncomfortable? The longer Hollywood Hogan ruled, the harder it became to separate the character from the man, and the more power he held backstage, the more resentment brewed behind closed doors. Eventually, the NWO storyline became bloated, repetitive. The magic faded, and fans began to lose interest. WCW, once unstoppable, began to crumble under its own weight. And Hogan? He was once again at the center, both praised for building the empire and blamed for helping tear it down. What no one knew then was that wrestling's most polarizing figure was about to enter the darkest chapter of his entire life. By the early 2000s, Hulk Hogan had been everything: hero, villain, savior, traitor, icon, and antagonist. He had conquered 2 wrestling empires, reinvented himself for a new generation, and stayed in the spotlight longer than anyone thought possible. But even the most enduring personas can't survive the real world forever. And in Hogan's case, the fall wasn't just personal. It was catastrophic. It began subtly. A divorce here, a lawsuit there, a few burned bridges. But in 2012, everything came crashing down when a private sex tape featuring Hulk Hogan leaked online. And not just on some seedy corner of the internet. It was published in full by media gossip site Gawker. The video showed Hogan with the wife of a close friend, radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge. Even more damning was the fact that the encounter had seemingly been recorded without Hogan's consent. But the content of the video went beyond infidelity. It included a racist rant, in which Hogan used the N-word repeatedly while discussing his daughter's dating life. The backlash was immediate and brutal. WWE terminated all ties with Hogan. He was removed from the Hall of Fame. His merchandise vanished from the official store. His name was erased from WWE's website, as though he had never existed. For someone who had once been the face of the company, it was public execution. Hogan later apologized, blaming the remarks on being in a dark place emotionally.
You're a racist.
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I never should have said what I said.
But for many, the damage was irreversible. The icon of the 1980s, the man who told kids to respect everyone, was now exposed as a man carrying deep, ugly biases. Still, Hogan wasn't finished. Not yet. He went to war, not just for his reputation, but for revenge. In 2013, he filed a $100 million lawsuit against Gawker, accusing the company of violating his privacy and publishing the tape without his consent. At first, it looked like a long shot.
This is not a system of secret justice. This is the United States of America.
This case is about one video that was posted.
Gawker framed the issue as a First Amendment battle, freedom of the press versus celebrity privilege. But behind the scenes, Hogan had a secret ally, billionaire tech mogul Peter Thiel, who had a personal vendetta against Gawker. Thiel secretly bankrolled Hogan's lawsuit, turning the case into a strategic attack on the very existence of the outlet. In 2016, the unthinkable happened. Hogan won. The jury awarded him $140 million in damages. Gawker filed for bankruptcy and was effectively destroyed. Hogan didn't just win a lawsuit, he ended a media company. For some, he was a hero for standing up to unethical journalism. For others, it was a dangerous precedent. A wealthy man, backed by a vengeful billionaire, silencing the press. But while the legal victory was historic, the personal cost was enormous. Hogan's reputation was in ruins. He had become a cultural pariah, spoken of in hushed tones, mocked in late-night monologues, shunned by the very fans who once idolized him. Public appearances became rare. The industry he helped build had moved on without him. And behind the scenes, things weren't any better. Hogan's marriage had ended in a messy divorce. His ex-wife accused him of infidelity and abuse. His son, Nick, was involved in a car crash that left a young man permanently disabled. Hogan himself battled depression, chronic pain, and more than a dozen surgeries on his back, knees, and hips.
I can't push away. So when I'm done brushing my teeth, I have to lean in like that and then pull back.
The once invincible figure was now physically broken, emotionally battered, and socially exiled. In interviews from this time, Hogan spoke of suicide, of loneliness, of contemplating whether life still had purpose. For a man who had spent decades hearing thousands chant his name, silence was the most painful sound of all. He tried to find redemption through religion, through new business ventures, even reality TV. But nothing quite landed. The world had changed. Hogan hadn't. He had lived too long as a symbol. And now the symbol was fractured, beyond repair. But even in exile, he refused to disappear completely. He believed there was still time to rewrite the ending. After the lawsuits, the scandal, and the exile, Hulk Hogan did something most icons never get the chance to do. He survived it all. He didn't die a disgraced villain. He didn't vanish into obscurity. Somehow, despite everything, the sex tape, The racial slurs, the corporate blacklisting, the injuries, the surgeries. Hogan came back, but his return wasn't triumphant. It was complicated. In 2018, after years of being erased from WWE's public image, the company reinstated him into the Hall of Fame. The official statement was cautious. Hogan had met with talent and apologized for his past comments. But backstage, the reaction was mixed. Some wrestlers, especially black wrestlers, weren't ready to welcome him back.
Is everybody in agreement that it's time that he be allowed back?
No, it's 50-50. I've talked to guys that were like, man, the hell with him. And I had guys that was like, you know what, man, if he's willing to make a change and try to help out and go and speak up and be a part of the answer rather than a part of the problem, then it's all good.
New Day, one of WWE's most popular tag teams, issued a public statement expressing disappointment. "We do not feel his apology was genuine," they wrote. Titus O'Neil refused to shake Hogan's hand. Others stayed silent, but visibly uncomfortable. The man who once united crowds across America now divided locker rooms. The return was real, but the redemption? Still a question mark, yet Hogan pressed forward. He appeared sporadically on WWE programming, always in nostalgia segments, never as a central figure. He hosted WrestleMania 37 alongside Titus O'Neil, but the chemistry was awkward. He was met with a mix of cheers and uncomfortable silence. The legend was present, but the magic, for many, was gone. Off-screen, Hogan continued trying to rebuild his image. He opened a beach shop in Clearwater, Florida. He launched Real American Beer, a nostalgic nod to his theme song. He posted regularly on social media, always in character, smiling, tanned, flexing. He seemed to believe that if he just kept being Hogan long enough, the world might forgive Terry Bollea. But time had taken its toll. By his late 60s, Hogan's body was failing. He had undergone more than 25 surgeries, including multiple back fusions, knee replacements, and hip reconstructions. He walked slowly, often with assistance. In photos, the once massive arms hung looser. The once proud posture bent forward. The body that had carried the business on its back, literally, was crumbling. In interviews, Hogan seemed softer, less bombastic, more aware of his legacy and the weight of it. "If I could go back, I would have handled things differently," he said in a 2022 podcast. "But brother, I can't rewrite the past. I can only try to do better now." He became a mentor of sorts, offering support to young wrestlers, attending fan conventions, sharing advice. Stories emerged of Hogan quietly helping others behind the scenes. He sent personalized letters to children battling illness. He offered guidance to up-and-coming stars. He even reached out to some of the people he had hurt, attempting private apologies where public ones had failed. Still, the shadow of his past never left. Every tribute video, every guest appearance, every headline, always came with an asterisk. He was a legend, yes, but a complicated one. A man whose greatest battles were not in the ring, but in his personal life. A man who spent decades building his name, and just as long trying to clean the stains from it. But maybe that's what made the redemption real. Not because everyone forgave him. They didn't. Not because he made everything right. He couldn't. But because he tried. Because for the first time in decades, Terry Bollea was no longer pretending to be a superhero. He was just a man trying to own the story he had written. In the end, redemption wasn't a promo or a grand return. It was quieter, smaller, a smile in a convention hall. A handshake from a fan who said,
Thanks for making my
"You were my
childhood, buddy."
childhood." a nod from a colleague who had once looked at him with contempt, and now just saw a tired old man trying to make peace. Hulk Hogan had spent his life on a stage, playing a god. But now, as the curtain slowly began to fall, he was finally learning to live as a man. On the morning of July 24, 2025, the world awoke to a headline that stopped generations in their tracks. Hulk Hogan has died at 71. The man who had once seemed larger than life, immortal even, was suddenly gone. He passed away at his home in Clearwater, Florida, from cardiac arrest. No arena, no spotlight, no final match. Just a quiet end to the loudest live wrestling had ever known. His wife, Sky Daly, announced his death in a simple, tearful post. "He died in my arms," she wrote, "and my heart shattered in that moment." His daughter Brooke, who had once starred with him in reality shows and now lived far from the spotlight, shared a single photo, her father smiling, holding her hand when she was 5 years old. No caption, none needed. Within hours, tributes flooded the internet. WWE posted a black and white image of Hogan in his prime with the words, "Thank you, Hulk, for everything." Wrestlers young and old, from Ric Flair and John Cena to Roman Reigns and even The Rock, posted memories, quotes, photos, and videos. Many called him the reason I ever stepped into the ring. Others were more measured, acknowledging his flaws but honoring his impact. The following night on SmackDown, the lights dimmed. The bell tolled 10 times, and for one brief moment, thousands of fans stood in silence, remembering a man who had once made them believe in something bigger than the ring. But not all voices were reverent. Old wounds reopened. Articles resurfaced, revisiting his racist remarks, the Gawker lawsuit, the careers he may have sabotaged. Some asked, again, whether he ever truly earned forgiveness, whether the man deserved the pedestal he'd been given. Even in death, Hulk Hogan remained polarizing. But maybe that was the most honest legacy of all, one that mirrored real life. Because Hogan's story was never clean. It was never simple. It was complicated, messy, human. He was a man who inspired millions and hurt people along the way. He stood for family, for faith, for strength. And he contradicted all of it behind closed doors. He built an empire on his back and burned bridges behind him. He stood in front of sold-out crowds and behind courtroom walls. He was everything at once: hero, heel, savior, sinner. And now, he was gone. At the Clearwater Beach shop he once proudly ran, fans gathered. Some came in full Hogan gear, yellow shirts, red boas, plastic mustaches. Others just stood quietly, laying flowers at the front door. The sign was taped to the glass. Gone, but never forgotten. "What you gonna do now, brother?" For some, Hulk Hogan represented their childhood. For others, he was a symbol of how even heroes can fall. But no matter which side you stand on, one thing is certain. No one changed wrestling or pop culture the way he did. And on July 24th, the final bell rang for Terry Bollea. Not Hulk Hogan, not the icon, not the myth, just a man. Mortal after all. When the dust settled, when the tributes ended and the headlines faded, one question remained. What was Hulk Hogan's legacy? Not the slogans, not the merch, not even the WrestleMania moments, but the real legacy. The one that outlives the chants, the ring lights, and the character. The answer? It's complicated. Because Hogan didn't leave behind one legacy. He left behind two. Legacy number 1. The icon who built an industry. There is no denying it. Without Hulk Hogan, professional wrestling would not be what it is today. He was the first true mainstream wrestling star. The first to transcend the sport and become a household name.
The guy that started it all. The guy that put our business on the map.
This is what Hulk always loved his whole life. He loved this.
He's a pillar. He's an icon. He's on the Rushmore, no matter what.
I think Hogan will always be a part of robust entertainment legacy, and he should be. He deserves it.
He brought pro wrestling into living rooms, onto lunchboxes, into Saturday morning cartoons and movie theaters. He helped make WrestleMania not just a wrestling event, but an American institution. He was the blueprint for everything that came after. Stone Cold, The Rock, John Cena. Every megastar owes part of their success to the trail Hogan blazed, the larger-than-life wrestling persona. Hogan invented it. The model of the wrestler-turned-celebrity-turned-brand? Hogan was the prototype. He helped Vince McMahon transform WWF into a global empire. And in doing so, he helped change the business forever. The money, the spectacle, the scale. That all started with Hulkamania. And even in WCW, his influence was seismic. The NWO storyline, with Hogan at its core, created the Monday Night Wars, a golden era of wrestling that pushed both companies to their creative limits. It wasn't just good TV. It was culture-shifting television. Ratings-breaking, revenue-making, era-defining television. For millions of fans, he was their childhood, their hero, their reason for believing in wrestling. That version of Hogan, the ring general, the icon, the myth, remains etched into the DNA of the industry, and it always will. Legacy number 2, the man who fell from grace. But there is another legacy, darker, quieter, harder to honor. The Hogan who was caught using racial slurs on tape. The Hogan who buried rising stars to protect his spot. The Hogan who played politics backstage and hurt careers. The Hogan whose personal life collapsed under scandal and contradiction. He was a man who preached morals to children and broke many of those same values behind closed doors. For some, this side of Hogan will forever stain the memories. They can't unhear the slurs. They can't forgive the manipulations. And they don't believe a hero can be rebuilt once he's exposed as human. Painfully, disappointingly human. Wrestling fans, like all fans, have long memories. And for every child who cried when Hogan slammed MJ, there's an adult who cringed reading courtroom transcripts and leaked audio. It's not easy to separate the myth from the man, and maybe we shouldn't, because both are real. So which legacy wins? That's not for history to decide. That's up to each person who 𝗖𝗢𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗧.
Grateful, for everything, this beautiful life. Hulkamania shall live forever, long after I'm gone.